Hey, I'm Sapphire. Want to hear something scary? From creepy humanoids to evil creatures, this next volume is all about those unsettling things that are just not quite human. Our first chapter is about one of my greatest fears, a possessed doll. Ever since I was a little girl, I have absolutely hated anything that looks even the slightest bit lifelike. Puppets, animatronics, and especially dolls. There's just something incredibly disturbing about looking into the eyes of something that is so close to being human. Movies like Child's Play and Dolls only made my paranoia worse, and with more recent movies like The Conjuring and Annabelle, it's clear that many people still find dolls to be horrifying. In this chapter, I will be telling you the true story behind a very famous doll. In 1970, a young woman named Donna was turning 28, and for her birthday, her mother gave her a seemingly harmless Raggedy Ann doll that she purchased from a secondhand store. Both Donna and her roommate Angie were nurses, and so they were out of the house most of the time, leaving the doll in the apartment alone. They didn't think much of their new roommate until strange things started happening. One night, after a long shift, Donna came home to find the doll sitting on her bed in her closed bedroom, which would have been perfectly fine if that's where Donna had left her. Other nights, Donna would find the doll sitting on the couch with her legs crossed and arms folded, or standing upright in the kitchen. Both Donna and Angie were rational young women and believed there had to be a reasonable explanation for this. Maybe they were just remembering things wrong. But Lou, Angie's fiance, thought otherwise. He did not trust that doll one bit and wanted them to get rid of it, or at least consult a medium to see if there truly was something inside it. But Donna and Angie didn't believe that was possible, so they carried on as usual. Then, they began finding handwritten notes around the house. They were written in pencil in childlike handwriting on pieces of parchment, a type of paper that no one in the house owned. They read, "Help us." One night, Donna came home and found a mysterious red liquid on the doll's hands and chest. It looks like blood, but it was coming from the doll itself. That was the push that Donna and Angie needed to come to terms with the fact that there was something wrong with this doll. They brought in a medium and performed a seance. "A long time ago," the medium said, "before this apartment complex was built, there was a field on this property, and it was here that the body of 7-year-old Annabelle Higgins was found, and it is in this doll that her spirit now lives. She trusts you and just wants to be around you." Donna and Angie felt sorry for Annabelle and decided to let her stay in the apartment with them. Lou was not happy about that. One night, it was just Lou and Angie in the apartment, packing up for a road trip they were leaving on in the morning. Lou was walking to the kitchen and past Donna's room and heard shuffling coming from inside. Donna wasn't home, so who could it be? Lou threw the door open. There was nobody there. Nobody human, at least. He walked inside and saw Annabelle, sitting in the corner of the room. As he walked towards her, he got the burning feeling as though someone were standing behind him. He whipped around to find nobody. He turned back to Annabelle and felt burning again, but this time on his chest. He lifted his shirt to find 7 distinct scratch marks singed into his skin. The following morning, they called a priest, who then called Ed and Lorraine Warren, renowned demonologists. "This doll is not possessed," Lorraine told Donna. "Demons only possess humans. This entity was using this doll to manipulate you, moving it around the house so you would pay attention to it, then tricking a medium into telling you that it was the spirit of a harmless young girl. So, what does it want?" "Your soul." A priest performed an exorcism on the apartment, and the Warrens took Annabelle home with them in a bag. Knowing what this entity was capable of, they made sure to avoid the highways on their way home, since Annabelle would no doubt try to sabotage their drive. And they were right. Along the way, the car's engine continuously stalled. So, is Annabelle truly dangerous? Or is all of this an elaborate hoax? If you're the type who needs to see to believe, you can actually visit Annabelle at the Occult Museum, a section of the Warrens' Connecticut home where they store haunted relics collected from the many cases they worked on. She's kept locked in a box with multiple warnings. One skeptical visitor made the fatal mistake of mocking the doll, tapping her glass case and daring her to do her worst on him. When he left for home, he got into a terrible motorcycle accident and died 3 hours later. Whether or not the Warrens created that story as a cautionary tale, would you really want to test it? What if there were creatures that could do your evil bidding for you? This next story comes from Arwish, whose older sister Jessie had the unfortunate honor of encountering such a spirit. One night, about 7 years ago, 18-year-old Jessie was home alone. And when one is alone, one tends to let their imagination get the best of them. So when lights started flickering and doors opened on their own, Jessie didn't think too much of it. It was probably all in her mind. Then, some of her friends decided to pay her a visit. Jessie did notice that the strange activity stopped when they were there. They stayed until about 10 p.m., and after they left, Jessie decided to watch some TV. The walls of her apartment were paper thin, and she could hear every word that her fighting neighbors were exchanging. Frustrated, she decided to get some fresh air out on her balcony. But right as she was about to place her hand on the doorknob, she heard a knock, coming from the other side of the door. Writing that off as her imagination, she opened the door and was immediately hit with a strong gust of wind. She covered her eyes to protect them from the impact. Then, she could see, in the distance, a pair of glowing red eyes. At that moment, all the lights in the house shut off. Jessie turned back inside the house, closed and locked the balcony doors, and stumbled her way in the darkness to her bedroom. She could hear children's laughter echoing throughout the halls. She locked the doors and took cover underneath her blanket. Once she had calmed down a bit, she slowly pulled the blanket from her face. And that's when she saw it. It looked like a small boy with glowing red eyes. Its mouth curled into a mischievous grin when it saw that Jessie was looking at it. She quickly pulled the covers back over her head and heard an extremely high-pitched scream. And Jessie's ears felt pain like she'd never felt before. When Jessie woke up the next morning, there was blood all over her covers, all coming from her ears. Terrified of the previous night's events, she visited her grandmother and told her everything that happened. Luckily, her grandmother knew exactly what was going on. "What you saw last night was a bakroe," her grandmother said, as she continued to explain the history of these spirits. During the West Indies sugar trade in the mid-17th century, there were mass sugarcane plantations in Suriname, a Dutch colony in South America, where Jessie's grandmother grew up. The plantation owners imported slaves from Africa, Asia, and Indonesia. The Indonesians were very spiritual, as they believed that their faith would help them get through these terrible times. When a slave died, they performed a ceremony so that the spirit could be put to rest. But sometimes, the ritual couldn't be completed, and therefore, the deceased soul became a restless entity. These are the bakroe, spirits that are roughly half the size of a human child with enlarged heads. They are half flesh and half wood and cannot feel any pain. They can be controlled by those who practiced obeah, an Afro-American religion similar to voodoo or Santeria. These spell workers would use the bakroe to cause harm to someone, and since the bakroe have no will of their own, they carry out their master's wishes fearlessly. The bakroe will attempt to possess the body and mind of the victim, consume their soul, and take their life. If the victim is easily manipulated, then the bakroe will have no trouble carrying out its task. But if the victim is strong-willed, like Jessie, then they can stop it from taking over. Jessie believes that it was her ex-boyfriend who sent the bakroe after her, since he practiced obeah and was convinced that she had cheated on him. Because obeah is not a commonly practiced religion, Jessie has had no luck in figuring out how to completely get rid of the bakroe. To be safe, Jessie's grandmother had a protection ritual performed for her. And while that has prevented the bakroe from possessing her, it hasn't stopped them from trying. Every now and then, she still hears the high-pitched whispers, the childlike laughter. Sometimes, she catches one in the corner of her eye. It's been 7 years since she first encountered them, but strange things still happen to this day. Recently, she saw what looked like a 5-year-old boy in a hoodie staring at her house. It was raining pretty hard, so she went outside to see if he needed help. But when she looked up, he was gone. She went back inside and forgot about him, until hours later when she saw him again, still wandering outside her house. It was pretty late at night, so she went back out to talk to him and immediately became nauseous and ran back inside, where the lights began flickering uncontrollably. Maybe that was all a coincidence, or maybe the bakroe is still after her. So, what do you think of Jessie's experience? Do you think it's possible for someone to send an evil spirit after you? And if so, would you ever use one? And even though the bakroe failed to possess Jessie, she now lives in constant fear that it will show up and succeed. So in that sense, hasn't the bakroe already taken over her mind? A very special thank you to Arwish from the Netherlands for sharing your sister's story with me, and I hope that she can get rid of the bakroe one day. Artificial intelligence used to be science fiction, but technology is quickly catching up. As robots become more lifelike and realistic, will we one day live in a world where a human and robot are indistinguishable? This next chapter, an abridged version of the creepypasta written by username RaidenDP1, takes place in that world. Do not buy an RT. Let the fad die off, please. I know what you're thinking, but Trevor, RTs have the potential to change the world. And yes, I do agree that the fantasy that IGT has been trying to pitch us for the last 3 years sounds pretty great, but in reality, it's disgusting, inhumane, and highly illegal. I have no concrete proof for any of my beliefs, so all I'm gonna do is tell you the story leading up to this post and let you reach your own conclusions. I lost one of my legs to a soft tissue sarcoma last year. Since I'm both disabled and terminally ill, I'm more than qualified for IGT's charity, which provides free RTs to people who really need them. When I received a message from one of their PR people, I was ecstatic. Who wouldn't want the hottest, latest piece of technology for absolutely free? The package was delivered to me on a Monday, straight to my door. It was a 2060 Greta. Not the latest model, but about a few years old. The body and head were already in place, so all I had to do was attach the limbs and then activate the unit. I had to do that myself so that it could imprint. Imprinting is the most important part of the setup. The first person the RT sees upon its activation becomes its, well, for lack of a better word, its master. Upon turning the unit on for the first time, well, I guess after activation, it's not really it anymore, is it? Upon turning the unit on for the first time, she began the imprinting process. Her instructions stated rather sternly that I was not to penetrate the skin layer of the RT under any circumstances, and that upon malfunction, I was to bring her to an IGT certified repair shop only, or else I'd be voiding my warranty. I didn't pay it much mind though. So the imprinting was complete, and my RT's life, if you can call it that, began. That machine, which uncannily resembled a young girl, looked around, her artificial eyes flickering and moving, just like real ones would. She asked me to name her, but I don't believe in choosing names for other people. But I'm probably just biased. When I was born, my parents named me Marissa, and when I legally changed my name to something more fitting, it felt empowering. So I told her she should pick her own name when she felt ready. It's funny, even at that moment, I subconsciously knew that she was more than just a computer in a humanoid body, like IGT was advertising. Especially when she began dreaming. When RTs dream, their software is sorting through the data collected during the day, placing the most important bits on the hard drive and deleting the rest. But my own RT, who had begun going by the name Laura, was dreaming about things she'd never seen before, like a camera having pictures on its memory card that you've never taken. It was always the exact same dream, a white house with 2 floors looking like cubes stacked upon each other. I was positive I'd never seen this particular house before, and yet Laura recalled it flawlessly, down to the finest detail. After about the 6th time she recollected this dream, I was convinced that there was something very weird happening here. Worried that my RT might have a serious issue, I asked her to draw a sketch of the house and then sent that to IGT's customer support alongside an explanation of the problem. This is the response I received. Dear Mr. Kingsley, I regret to hear about the issues you're experiencing with your artificial, but rest assured there is nothing wrong with your RT. During quality assurance, the engineers use stock photos to flash a unit's short-term memory and make sure it's functioning. The image you have sent me shows an uncanny resemblance to one of the stock images we used for the process, which I have attached to this email. I downloaded the picture and, wouldn't you know it, it was the exact same house that Laura had drawn. Immediately I thought, conspiracy, they photoshopped this image. But no, a reverse image search brought up plenty of sites hosting that particular stock photo, which was apparently uploaded quite a few years ago. The customer support guy's story checked out, so then why couldn't I put this out of my mind? I asked Laura how she knew this photo was the same house in her dreams, and she told me that it just felt right. She obviously had a connection to this house, and I wanted to find out why. After a lot of research, I discovered that the house was built by architect and artist Nigel Winston. He'd built over a dozen houses during his career, each of which had some sort of quirk to it. The white one he called House of Cards, which was built in 2044, and for a time, Nigel lived in it with his family, but they'd moved out about a year ago. I got his email from the real estate ad, and I didn't want my email to be ignored if I told him my research's purpose, so I pretended to be interested in purchasing the house, and also asked more information about the house's history. I am pasting his response below, in full, and leaving the conclusions to you. Dear Mr. Kingsley, thank you for your interest in my House of Cards. It's in a great location. A school and a hospital are both within short driving distance away from the house. As a matter of fact, that's the reason I chose to build there. It's ideal for raising a child. The neighborhood is quiet and calm, and the reason we moved has nothing to do with the area. My youngest daughter disappeared roughly a year ago, and once the investigation was closed, we found that the house just held too many memories. If you have any more questions or would like to set up a meeting, feel free to respond to this email, and I would appreciate it if you can keep my Laura in your thoughts. With respect, Nigel Winston. Want something scary for your walls? We have a limited edition poster available for purchase. There's only 666, so get yours before they're gone. For more information, click the link in the description. Like this video if it gave you the chills, and don't forget to subscribe to Snarled and check out our other videos. And if you dare to follow me, my links are in the description below. Until next time, sweet dreams.